this is it. This is the day that we find out if we've bought a dud or a bargain, because today we're going to find out if the engine will actually start. After all, this is the cheapest Ferrari in Europe, and the main reason for that is because no one knows if the engine runs. If it's seized, it will cost many thousands of pounds to rebuild. If it runs and everything else is okay, then John might have snagged himself a fantastic deal, as good 308 GT4s are now going for £50,000. But there are a number of jobs we need to complete before we get to turn the key, the most significant being to change the timing belts. But before I try and rotate the engine even just a tiny bit, I want to drop the contaminated oil that was mentioned on the long list of issues that came with the car. So, let's crack on. That's freed up, because basically what's happened, you can imagine you've got all those carburetors up there. You've got 4 twin carburetors, and of course if there's too much fuel, it overfuels, whatever, it's basically going to kind of end up washing the bore. So it's going to kind of wash past the rings, it's going to go into the sump, and of course that's going to then basically damage the oil, because of course the oil has got to be nice and sticky and lubricating, and then the petrol's a solvent, so it's actually going to try and dissolve that oil, and so if there's too much or even any really fuel in the oil, it's definitely going to be an issue. The other thing with that, of course, is it might mean that the rings are perished. We need to replace the rings at some point, but that's a whole other day. I just want to know today whether this is actually going to run. What I've also done, I've got myself a little plastic tub down here, just so I can actually see how bad the contamination of the oil is. And I figured this way, it's going to be a bit more visual. Not very happy looking. Well, that's actually going, it's quite a lot of oil. It doesn't really look, it doesn't smell very fuely, it just smells old sort of engine oil. And then looking at the drain plug, because often there's a magnet in here so you can actually pick up any little bits of metal that might be whizzing around the engine, and it's actually looking pretty clean, so that's a good sign. So it may well have been changed recently, maybe there is no magnet, so that could be the thing. But anyway, that looks like it's all right. Now, thinking about it, as you look closer, you can see that you've got motore, or whatever it is, so I guess that's the oil for the motor. And of course, when you think about it, this is the differential here, so this is actually the gearbox. And it says there, olio cambio. And of course, then cambio is like change. So in like French, you have changer de vitesse, which would be changing of gears, I guess, or changing of speed rather. So I think that basically means the gearbox. So that drain plug is actually for the gearbox, and this drain plug is actually for the engine oil. So I'm glad I didn't undo that one. But this one, I think we'll put this one back in again now. But what I'm going to do, because obviously normally what you want to do is you want to drop your oil when it's actually up to engine temperature, sort of running temperature, to make sure that you can get it all out. It's much more liquid. But of course in this case I can't do that because I haven't started it yet, but I want to get rid of this stuff. I'm now going to put in some flushing oil, and the idea of the flushing oil is obviously it's still good enough to run. It's still going to be much better than having the old oil in here, but of course it's going to get into those little nooks and crannies, and hopefully then I can then drop that out again. Then we put in a new filter and new fresh proper oil once everything is all working and we know it actually runs. Apart from the state of the oil, one of the issues with our 80s Ferrari is not knowing much about its history and not knowing if the mileage is correct, and we're not actually able even to interrogate the car's computer because it's too old to even have an OBD2 port, as they didn't actually become mandatory until 1996. Now, OBD2 ports are actually surprisingly useful things to have on a modern vehicle, because you can just plug in a reader like this one from Carly, and then you can connect to your phone app, and then you actually have access to lots of features, usually only accessible by automotive professionals. So things like diagnostic error codes, which are perhaps the most useful money-saving feature, because at the push of a button, Carly scans all of the car's modules, identifying any errors in a traffic light system, showing bad faults needing urgent attention in red, through lesser issues in orange and yellow, with green showing the systems with no issues at all. Clicking on an issue expands understanding with more detail about the DTCs, or diagnostic trouble codes, including severity and ease of repair, with further links to solutions from other users in the community, and also to Smart Mechanic, where known faults and guidance from Carly's own mechanics can be found. All very useful. Once resolved or at least noted, issues can be cleared individually or all at once, and a quick rescan will show persistent errors such as this BMW's 3 failing glow plugs and an auxiliary water pump problem. Carly also gives you access to coding options where you can customize your car features just the way you want them, live data, mileage verification and digital service records. And something I could really do with on both my T5 and any of my distress of Range Rovers is the ability to force a DPF Regen. So you just click onto the dashboard, obviously connect to your car. In this case I'm on 1 Series BMW, and then I'm just going to go for features, and then you scroll down below maintenance, you can see DPF. So I click on DPF and then I can start continuing with that, and I can actually start the live check. And unlike all of my diesel vehicles, this car actually has no sit in it already. But ordinarily you would follow those instructions, so I can actually just go for request a regen, and then it gives you some instructions, you do a little agreement, and then off you go. So then it actually says what you need to do now is drive for perhaps, well, half an hour or so, give or take, a minimum of about 50 miles an hour. Basically you just want to try and keep the engine revs quite high so you can have a lower gear and higher revs if you like, and just keep driving while keeping a little note of what's going on. Get your passenger to tell you how much soot is left, and once you've got below about 8 grams, because normal running's between 0 and 20, but get below 8 grams, if you get to 0 even better, then ultimately your regen will be complete, your DPF won't have any soot in it, and you're going to be good to go. So with Carly you can unlock the truth about your car's health, and using advanced manufacturer diagnostics and smart mechanic you can save thousands on repairs. Now Carly is compatible with cars from 2001 onwards, and you can check your car's available features and get 15% off Carly by clicking on my special link in the description. Well, let's get that flushing oil into the engine. Right then, so just open up our little oil cap there. Just going to pop a little funnel in there. Now this flushing oil works with petrol and diesels, and it's perfectly safe to run the engine on this, but not for very long. So literally kind of get it up to temperature, but probably about 10 minutes or so would be enough to then for it to get around the engine. I mean, obviously ideally what you would do is put it in a warm engine already, so maybe we get away with maybe 15-20 minutes, but essentially what it's going to do is it's got detergents in there and stuff. It's going to just get all the soot, all the gunk that's in the engine, obviously hopefully mix as well with any fuely oil that's in there too, and then we'll end up with a nice clean engine inside, ready for some fresh new oil. So if we can get it to start, we'll leave it running for a little bit, and afterwards we'll change the oil again. Now when the oil in this engine was actually contaminated with fuel, it could have been so thin that when we crank it over with the key and it fired into life, it would just do a ton of damage. Because after all, most damage on engines is done literally when you turn them over and there's not enough oil pressure. In fact, some engines even wait until there is enough oil pressure before they allow the ignition to kick in. So now we've got our flushing oil. It's not quite the right oil to go for thousands of miles on, but it's certainly much better than the contaminated stuff. So I'm now more confident to actually crank it over, at least by hand, to find out whether this engine is seized or not. Because after all, the reason it's so cheap is because we don't know the condition of the engine. And it's an interference engine, which means the valves will actually hit the pistons if all the timing is actually out of kilter. And we don't know that that happened before it was taken off the road. We don't know that it was hydraulic, perhaps it had gone through a puddle. We don't know that it's just seized out of kind of corrosion and lack of oil perhaps. So this is a really big moment. We're now going to crank it over by hand very slowly and find out whether, at least for one thing, the engine is seized or not. Here we go. This really is a moment of truth here. Oh yes. Oh, look at that. There is very little resistance, but bear in mind that's because spark plugs are out, and of course we've oiled the bores. So we've now got all that lovely XCP just lubricating the bores, so there's no graunchiness. Can't feel any valves bouncing off the pistons. Oh. I think this is quite a result. This means that John didn't buy a pup. He's actually bought a properly useful car, perhaps. Now you can see all these little marks around. Now of course that's all to do with the timing, which is the next thing we're going to be tackling. So the next thing I need to know is where top dead center is. And there is actually a little observation panel just above the sort of flywheel, I guess, but also underneath the oil cooler. But so far, this is quite the result. So the next thing is, can we get up any oil pressure? Now the thing is, I could obviously try and crank this over like I am manually, for a couple of days perhaps, and we may or may not actually make up some oil pressure. Obviously the more efficient way to do that would be to use the starter motor. Now thankfully we already know that the ignition is working, because obviously we managed to get the fuel pump to come on and put out that horrible nasty fuel. So all I have to do now is go on to one extra click, and theoretically that engine should spin over. And because we've got our spark plugs are still out, and because we've lubed the bores and we know that it's all spinning quite nicely, it should just spin up. And then on the dashboard there's a nice little oil gauge. So assuming that's working, there's also probably should be an oil light as well, then theoretically we'll be able to see if we've got oil pressure. So that is our next little test. Right, so I've disconnected the fuel, because obviously that's quite key. We're inside our Ferrari, very exciting. So we've got our fuel gauge, we've got our rev counter, we've got an oil pressure gauge, which is obviously the one we're really looking for. Next to that is the water temperature. Beneath that is a really noisy clock, which is hard to see when you're driving. And then you've got the odometer there, speedo, and then you've got on the side there, you've got the water temperature gauge. So what I'm hoping for is when we actually turn on the ignition, we get some life. So first of all, we've got the sort of generator light is coming on, or the alternator light, but also you probably saw that little dial there, the needle is just kind of turning on as it turn off again, and you can see it just kind of comes into life. So theoretically, when I now crank it over, the engine will spin up, the oil pump will go, hopefully we'll then build up some oil pressure. So here we go. So like that, only much more successful. So it seems what's going on, you can sort of hear the notes change. It could be, and we've got the battery on charge just in case. I mean, it could be that the oil pressure is kind of building up and then it's kind of bogging down a little bit. And in fact, the needle actually started to go down a little bit. Now, I think what happens is the 12 volt gets it to where it starts, but then theoretically, obviously it's going to be going to earth. So this positive will be, the feed will be like going into the gauge, and then it's going to be going from the gauge through the wiring to the sender, which is going to be in the engine, and that's going to be earthed by the engine block itself. So theoretically, if we have maximum pressure, then we should get obviously like almost a dead short, and I suspect that's when the gauge would move. So the fact that it's not moving at all either means we're just not getting any oil pressure, which could be a very bad thing. Could be that the oil pump's not working, could be that, I mean, obviously the flushing oil will obviously build up pressure like it should do. So we might have a serious issue, or it might just be that the sender isn't working, which is hopefully the most likely thing. But I think we've definitely got a feed there because we can see it kind of changing. So next thing to do is just to check in the engine bay to see if we can actually kind of trick that sender into life somehow. Right then, so what I need to find is the oil pressure sender. Aha, I think there it is. So it's underneath the oil filter. You can see that kind of bulb at the bottom there. So it's plugged in to literally directly to one of the oil galleries, and obviously it's going to be like a diaphragm or something inside there, so it's going to be kind of isolated from the oil itself. So it's going to detect that pressure, and then on the other side there'll be some device, some kind of variable resistor, which is then obviously going to effectively then take it down to earth, and depending on how much voltage or how much resistance it is, it's going to obviously then be reflected in our dial on the dashboard. So it's plugged in, which is a start, but it clearly isn't necessarily working. So what I might do is just disconnect that wire there, or that connector, and then just got a little sort of power probe thing, and then I'm just going to plug that into there. That's interesting. So at the moment it's going to earth. So now I'm just going to turn on the ignition, and what we should do is see some kind of positive voltage at that end. Right then, so I'm just going to stick the probe into, that's good news already. So that means we've got 12 volts, or something, at least positive volts. If I now go the other way and connect it into earth, you can see then straight away that the needle on the dial goes up to maximum pressure, which is brilliant. So that means that oil pressure gauge on the dashboard is working. That means the wiring up to here is working. So then it means it's one of two problems. Either the sender isn't working, and that hopefully won't be too much to repair, the change. It should be relatively easy to get out, I hope. Or it means that the oil pump isn't working, in which case our really expensive Ferrari engine is basically nearly toast. Hopefully there won't be any damage in there, but I'll have to drop it out probably, or hoik it out this way actually, to try and then change the oil pump. So let's hope it's not that. Now there is a test I can do to find out whether it's the sender or the oil pump. So what I can do is take the sender off, I'm going to change it anyway, and then I can then pop in another oil pressure gauge, a remote one. I can try it all over again, and then hopefully if that shows we've got oil pressure, then we're good. So fingers crossed. Well, the first problem with trying to sort this out is the fact that the sender is actually nestling underneath the oil filter, and I'm not going to be able to get a spanner on it at all unless I actually remove the oil filter. Now, the good news is, of course, that the oil is going to be drained out ages ago. That's not a problem at all. The thing is, it's quite beaten up, and it's also looking a little bit rusty, so it's obviously been there quite a long time. Now, when it comes to actually trying to get off an oil filter, you can get all kinds of different things. You get these kind of like strappy devices, which are all kind of very groovy and stuff, if it hasn't been there forever. But if it has been there a long time, then you kind of want to think about how you can do that. And obviously, you can be a bit violent. You could use these kind of sort of pliers, if you like. Can't even go for the screwdriver through the side there, because of course that's going to mean that then I won't be able to wind it around. It's a pretty butchery way of doing things. This is a Ferrari, it deserves a bit more respect than that. Now, a tool I really rather love are these little chaps here. Now, these things are pretty epic. So you can see obviously as you wind them up, they actually kind of wind tighter and tighter and tighter, so they kind of, the more pressure you have to try and rotate it, the better they work. But hopefully, just a good old-fashioned kind of, well, it's an oil filter socket really, is going to do the trick. So I'm just going to pop that onto there like so. I'm going to pick the right one. Lucky I've got a few to choose from here. There we go, cool. So, and this is just a tidy way of doing it. Although it's an expense, even if you just buy the kit for one, it's almost worth it. Oh yeah, okay. And then it's fine. So. Lovely, no mess at all, but also it's very, very dry around the rubber there. So obviously it's worth bearing in mind. Make sure when you put it back on again, I'm going to make sure I put a little smear of rubber there to make sure that it's a good seal. So now I can sort of get a bit closer to my little oil sender there. I reckon that's maybe, what, possibly a 17 or something. It's hard to say. I also have to snip those little chaps. There really is no access in here at all, but what I'm hoping is that I can just get just enough just to lever it off. It might even be 16, you know. Yeah, let's go with a 16. So I think that is the right size. The problem is I can't actually get in. You know what, I want to see if I can find maybe a bicycle spanner of some kind, something when I really waff a thin bit that I can get in just through the angle there. There's this little sort of gap just between those two, and if I can get that in there like so, I reckon there's a fighting chance. But whether I've got one of those is another matter. Now, it seems like a 16mm kind of hex on there. I can't actually get there because of this oil pipe. So that's got a whacking great big 27 on there. I think if I undo that, we might have a chance. Oh, it's not so bad. Right, okay, so. That's good. I get a little bit of movement there, so hopefully. I mean, how much of this car am I going to take apart just to get an oil filter off, just to find out whether we have any oil pressure, but it's obviously worth it. Oh, that's all it took. Oh, there we are. Well, there we go. So that is our pesky little oil pressure sender. Looks very heavy and overly sophisticated for something that doesn't actually work, but that's fine. But before I put the new one on, let's just pop in a little oil gauge, oil pressure gauge, and just see exactly how much pressure we've got, if there is any at all. Right, so I've got an oil pressure gauge and I've got a little adapter that's going to pop into here, and hopefully that will connect up nicely. And then with any luck, we can crank it over and then see if there's any joy. It'd be quite nice if that oil pump was actually working and our Ferrari is good to go to the next stage. Snip that up. So then, if So then if I thread this through the right way, I should be able to see, hopefully, so that's connected onto there, that's connected onto there. So that sits like so. That'll give me a pretty good idea. So, what am I missing? I might just nip up that big old nut there on the back because that's going to be very messy otherwise. So let's just crank it over. Well, that is not good. So we don't seem to have any oil pressure. That really isn't ideal at all. This may be the root of the problem. Maybe we have actually got a pup. Because if there's no, I'll check for leaks, I'll check for all kinds of things, and then this could be really bad. I can't see any obvious oil leaks anywhere. There's a little bit of oil around here where I've taken the filter off, but that's really about it. So I'm wondering, we know that we've already got topped up with oil, or at least flushing oil at least, so that's good. I mean, it could be that might be a little bit too thin perhaps, maybe, I don't know. I'm just thinking that because we've got an oil pump down on the other side of the engine underneath all the cam belts and stuff, and then of course it's got to be having a pickup inside the sump somewhere, or at least some sort of idea of that, and of course it's going to have to be pushing it through the filter. Now what if it just hasn't actually managed to kind of get enough, it's got a bit of an airlock or whatever it is, so I think what I might do, because it's easy to do now, I might just, he says, it's stuck again. I might just take off the oil filter again and actually just sort of fill up oil from inside the centre, and then maybe that way we'll end up sort of with just, oh no, actually that's not so bad. There's oil coming out. Oh, that's good. That's a good sign. So that means that I'm just being impatient. That means that actually the oil is pumping around, because otherwise why would the filter be full up? I'm still going to do it anyway. I'm just going to drop it a little bit more in the middle of there. And then let's see what happens. Hopefully it is just a case that it's been sat for so long. Try a little more, why not? And then just basically, I guess it's the same sort of thing as priming. Obviously it's difficult to prime this and turn it upside down quickly without making a mess. And some would argue that could actually cause an air leak. I think this way, with any luck, we should end up with a bit more joy. It's a good sign. So maybe it was just filling up the oil filter, maybe it was filling up all the other nooks and crannies. So let's give it another whiz over. Fingers crossed. Aha! Look at that! Oh, how wonderful! We've got a ton of oil pressure. Oh, that is wonderful news. Oh, oh my word. That is fantastic. Look at that. So we've got, well, it went up to around here somewhere, I get it. So it's about 64 psi, which I think is kind of like the minimum that it wants to be. Obviously that's normally up to temperature, but that's fantastic news. So that means that if we've actually got oil pressure on this gauge, so now let's try and put the new sender back on. And these things are notorious for having problems with their sender. So we'll put the new sender on, let's connect it up and see if we actually get something going on with the dashboard. Get our performance come to the rescue again. Wonderful. Even comes with a fresh new copper washer as well, which is wonderful. So that's great. So now I've got to somehow get all this off again without making a huge mess. Been quite lucky with this actually, because you're supposed to have or use a special tool to actually connect on or remove your oil gauge. That's interesting. Oh my word. Okay, so there is some kind of an adapter in there. It's promising. Now with this much bigger nut, it may be why somebody's changed this. Perhaps this little adapter And this little teeny weeny thing is actually a much easier way of getting everything connected up, because I think now I might actually have to try and create a tool, because the actual tool that you're supposed to use is kind of like a bent spanner, and it's got a little drive on the back, so you can kind of get, it's almost like a crow's foot. It's a very thin crow's foot, so I think I'll try a crow's foot myself, and if not that, let's get bending some spanners. Right then, well this is actually getting quite difficult. So I've managed to find some pretty mad tool here. There's no way that's going to fit inside there, but it could be very useful for other bits and pieces. So then I'm going to resort to potentially a crow's foot, a conventional crow's foot tool, which is kind of groovy. So that could go in there, but unfortunately I think, although it just seems quite big. Okay, so it does go on just about, but it's going to take a little bit of grinding to get that to actually fit. We've also got a flat spanner, and then theoretically what's nice about that is obviously I can flick it one way or the other, so that's kind of very useful. But again, that won't fit because of the piping, but I could then bend it potentially, but I have also got, hopefully, this little teeny thing here. This may well be the answer, may not be. I mean, it isn't very strong, but then it doesn't have to be, because of course it doesn't need an awful lot. Oh, there we go, that's working. Oh, lovely. It's not going to take a lot of kind of push power to get it into the right place. It hurts, but it's okay. So I think really is as easy as that. So there you go. A little bit of laser cutting or water jet cutting. I mean, I've even slightly bent it, but that's okay. That's good. So that's cool. So we've now got our oil pressure sensor, a new one, in place. It's quite messy. I'm going to put the old filter back on again, to be honest, because we are going to then flush this around and then drop it out again. Then I'll put a new filter on a bit later on. So let's do that. And then we can now try and connect this up to our original wiring, and hopefully we should maybe have some pressure at the dashboard. Look at that, we've actually got a little bit of oil pressure. Wonderful. It does ebb away a little bit quickly, but I think we'll get to that. The main thing is when it's spinning over, it's all good. Just one more try. Lovely. Well, that is absolutely fantastic news. So we now know that we've actually got oil pressure when we crank it over, and we can see that on the dashboard, which is great when it comes to actually running it and driving it around a little bit later on. So the next thing I want to do, while the spark plugs are out, while all the timing is the same as before, I thought, why not do a little compression test? It'd be quite interesting to understand exactly what's going on with each of the pistons. And obviously we know it's working, but it also is spinning over, which means that I guess the valves aren't hitting anything, but equally there may be no compression at all, which means it'd be very difficult to make it run. So just got a very simple standard compression tester. I'll pop that in, do all 8 cylinders, and then let's make a little note of that and just compare them all and see how we get on with that. So on number 1 cylinder, we seem to have about 100 psi. That sounds all right, but let's have a look and see what the rest of them are like. So number 2. Okay, so that's not bad, is it? At 90, 95, it's not that bad at all. So we're kind of it's looking good as a good start anyway. Number 3. looking good. So that's also, well, I'd say that's almost 98, 97, 98, that's nice. So it's looking very good. Number 4. Oh, it's over 100, probably 103, 102, 103. Okay, this is lovely. Now for the hard bank, all the stuff at the back. Okay, so now for number 5. That's pretty good. That's even more than 100. I'd say that's nearly, yeah, probably 105, 106 psi. That's good. Very uneven, but good. Number 6. Now, okay, that doesn't look so good, but I can actually hear a little bit of air escaping, so I'll just have a better go at that. And you can see it's sort of slowly going down, I guess. Well, not much. So maybe this one is a little tricky. Doesn't seem to like it much. Yeah, yes, I wasn't in the hole enough. Very strange. So what I'm going to try and do, I'm just going to pop in a spark plug just to check. So now that's fine. So that's no problem at all. I can just wind that in, finger tight. I mean, yeah, all the way to the seat, that's fine. So I would say, I don't know what's going on with that. It's obviously catching on something. Maybe there's, well, I don't know, it can't even be a washer or anything stuck down there because that's, I would just get in the way of the spark plug, which is frankly bigger than the tube I'm trying to put in the hole. So that's fine. So I'll tell you what I might try and do. Might just try the bit of borescope, endoscope, whatever you want to call it. Guess we're going down a hole, so it's going to be a borescope. And if I just compare it actually to the first one, you can see kind of nicely oily around there. So I mean, it all looks fine. So if we now go to the one that I can't get the tube into, I would say that looks kind of identical. So, I mean, very strange. There is, you can see just on that side, just there, there's a little tiny bit of corrosion. So there's just a little bit of corrosion just there, which you can see is just somehow maybe pushing everything over a little bit. But as I said, what's slightly odd about this is if you look at what I'm trying to shove down the hole and compare it to the spark plug, this is actually narrower on every level. So I'll just keep persevering, you never know. But it's interesting to know that all seems to be okay. If a spark plug fits, this really should. Now, somewhere in the workshop I have got a direct sort of like a steel tube that you can put this onto the end of, but I can't find it for one, but also I don't know that I'd actually get it in because of the bulkhead. But yeah, it's definitely resisting, and resistance is useless. But we know it's got some compression and a little bit of a leak. So I think once the spark plugs are in there, if you can't hear any noise, I mean that went in so much easier. Right, well, this is proving quite tricky. I don't know quite why this particular bit of thread isn't going in on just this cylinder. There's obviously some kind of issue. The good news is that the spark plug fits fine. So, but I still want to find out what kind of compression we've got. So I just thought I'd use a magic little tool I've just invented. It's called a tube, and that's going to fit just inside there like so. So I'm hoping it's just going to help guide it, because if you imagine when you're just wiggling it in, you can see even that without it, you know, it's obviously going all over the place, and with it, it's slightly better. So even though there's obviously a taper, it should kind of guide it all in. For some reason, it's not doing that, so I'm hoping this will make all the difference. Oh, right, that's definitely better. Okay, so here we go. Number 6, finally. That's pretty good, actually. Wow, that's good. 94, 95, maybe even 96. So that's okay. So there's obviously something wrong, but actually, as long as the spark plug fits, as long as it makes a nice seal, which looks like it does, we're all good. Who'd have thought a bit of tube would have been a useful tool? There we go. So number 7. That's pretty good too. So that is, 110. Kind of sporty at this end. So now finally number 8. Look at that. Oh, that's pretty good again. So that's kind of like maybe 101, 102 PSI. So that's really great news. We've got good even compression all round. We've got oil pressure as well. So the next thing I want to worry about is the cam belts. Now, the manual says you've got to change them every 2 to 3 years, depending on your mileage. We've got no idea the last time these were changed, so I'm definitely going to do that. But what's interesting, it's a V8, as we know, and it's got 4 cams. So it's obviously got a cam for the exhaust and a cam for the inlet on both sides of both banks. And of course, they all have to be perfectly in sync because this is an engine that will self-destruct should we get all of that out of sync. So the next thing I want to do is, first of all, actually find top dead center and then check all the little markings around to see if that makes sense. And there is actually a little hole I can look through to find exactly where top dead center is supposed to be. So there's our little magic hole. Somewhere down there I can see, obviously you've got a tiny bit of edge of flywheel, you've got 2 little bolts kind of holding on a little tag, and that's the pointer. You can't really see it, but there is a line in the middle of that somewhere. And then also you can see the cover of the clutch. So hopefully if I can spin the engine around now, theoretically, we'll then see a line appear, a mark, some kind of top dead center. But even though I'm using my clever little camera remote here, not sure I'm going to see it. Lots of clutch. I don't really know what I'm looking for. I suspect if anybody's done any timing, they'll have a kind of a white mark maybe. But obviously from the factory, it's probably just a dint in the, oh, there's some markings, don't know what they are. No. Ah, now. Okay, so there's our white mark right there. So you can see that just coming in. So, that theoretically now should be top dead center. So, let's have a little look on the marks. We've got these marks all round, so there's no mark down there. Ah, interesting. So we've got marks here and here, and you can see actually we're some way off, which is odd. So, why would that be? So obviously you want to be trying to set everything up to top dead center. Annoyingly, the marks to actually set all the stuff up, the cams up in the first place, when you first put the engine together, are actually inside, they're on the cams, they're not on the outside. So to see that, I need to take off the cam covers on both sides. Really don't want to do that just to find out if this engine works. Now we know when we turn it over that it's not kind of clashing with anything, it's not crashing with anything. So the engine's safe to spin, which means that chances are this was actually in a driving position. It was just things like the fuel pump and stuff that we fitted earlier that were causing the problems. But this is kind of odd. Now I guess what I might do, I might just see if I can actually work out what is going on with top dead center. So if I just put a little probe, so for example, there we go. So I've got like one of these little chaps here. So this dial gauge here is a digital one. So if I just turn it on, you can see it's got some little numbers in there. And then you can see then if I then move that up and down, you can actually see those numbers are going to change. So I'll pop that into position. Okay, so our DTI is on 0. I'm just going to rotate it round. Oh, it's moving. So we've got the piston coming up onto the DTI, and that's pushing it, and it's going kind of positive, and we've got quite a high number there. So 800, 900, 1,000. Ah, right, okay, there we go. So now it's going down that side. If we go back round the other way, 51. There we go. So around just before that, I think I found its little highest number, its peak, if you like. So around there, 50-ish, so 1050. So that's basically, imagine that the piston is actually kind of raised. We've got our DTI here, and the piston is going up and down, and so it's actually pushing that all the way up, and then coming back down again. And so the highest number on the DTI is where the piston is highest to the top of the head, and that will obviously be our top dead center. So now, if I quickly have a check over here. Yes, so you can see there, it's a little dint. It's showing top dead center on our flywheel as well. So we now know that at least that mark is exactly right. But what's interesting is that the marks on the sort of the pulleys on the inside here, on the camshafts, don't actually mark up or join up with the marks on the cam covers, which is a bit odd. But I think somebody may have been really clever here. So let's have a little look. I'm going to wind it around just a little bit more. Now see the cam whizzing past. So now the valve is coming up, it's closing. So we've done our suck. Maybe on squeeze. Right, so this is now 18 degrees before, and you can see the cam lobe is up in the air. So then we should have a bang. So there's top dead center. So let's have a look. Where's our distributor arm? Is just gone past 1. So that was our bang stroke for sure. So if I go to there, so they're all lining up, then basically we're no longer at top dead center. Right then, so now all of our marks are lined up on the back pulleys here, on the cam pulleys. So let's have a little look on our flywheel end. So there is a much clearer mark. It's actually sort of like a little nut that's been painted with a bit of Tipex or whatever. So this could be because when you static time or sort of set up the timing for the engine, it's about 18 degrees before top dead center. That might be where that is. It might just be a convenient sort of nut on the clutch cover. But either way, it's very handy. So obviously if I've got that mark in the right place, I've got these marks in the right place, then theoretically everything's ready to go. So when I then change the belts, I know where to put everything back in again. And slightly weirdly on this engine, you don't apparently, according to the user manual, the instruction manual, you don't actually need to actually lock the cams in position. Normally, the valves or the valve springs are kind of wobble the cams one way or the other, but I guess there's enough of them on here. Maybe they kind of find some kind of equilibrium and they should be okay. But because I've got the marks in place, even if something does move, I can move it back. And obviously I will check it by hand afterwards to make sure nothing's still clashing. But I don't need a locking tool apparently, so let's just try and change a belt without a locking tool on both sides. We're also going to be changing the pulley, this little idle pulley here. Again, we have no idea when it was last changed, it looks quite rusty. still a tooth out. Infuriating piece of, can we do it? Can we cheat it that way? That's something that's clever. So hopefully it's now back in position. So we're now going to roll it forward. And with any luck, when I've done one whole revolution, our marks will be back in position. So here we go. So that one lines up there, that one lines up there. That does look good over there for a change. And what's the top one like? Top one's good. I think we've done it. Hurrah! So one side is done. Only took a couple of minutes, which is brilliant. So. That's a little tougher than I was expecting because those belts are quite tight, which is probably a good thing in the end. So we've got new cam belts in position. We've got our new tensioner pulley bearings in position as well, and that was good because we have no idea when they were last changed, and they weren't terrible, but they were definitely on their way out. So that's good to get done. Now we've also checked that our marks are all in the correct position, and obviously you can see why those sort of locking tools were quite useful, because at least two of those cams did jump a little tooth and needed a bit of persuasion back in, but at least that's back to position. We've gone around now at least one revolution just to make sure that A, nothing's clashing if it was really out, but actually once it's all settled and back in position that all our marks still line up, which they do. So now I've done that, the tensioner has basically kind of done its job. I now need to tighten those two up so that they're now rigidly holding everything in position. And then we're going to be ready for the next stage. Oh, we're getting so close. It's almost underwhelming, isn't it? Well, the thing is, we now know that we've got compression, we know we've got oil pressure, we know that the valves are actually now going to go up and down the way they're supposed to, not bounce off the pistons, and hopefully they'll hold together with those new cam belts. So the next thing we need is a spark. Now, when you get a spark plug out of a box, obviously there is a gap, but it's not necessarily the correct gap. Now, there's a bit of a complication with our Ferrari, so depending on which manual you're looking, either it's 16 thou or 0.4 mil, or it's 20 to 25 thou. Now, I think a slightly fatter spark is probably the way forward, and I've got a little test just to see how that's going to work out. So first thing I need to do is actually set the gap itself. So I've got a little cool little tool here. So obviously back in the day you just bang it on a bench and hope that it was okay and get your feeler gauge out and make sure it's okay. But I actually got a nice little tool here that I found. Just pop the spark plug in there like so, and then I'm just going to use the right feeler gauge here, and then basically looking for a light drag. So I'm just going to do that up. So that's a little bit too much, and just literally crank it up. Well, actually, a tiny bit more. Oh, exactly that. So it's just, you can just sort of feel that motion, which is rather lovely. And if you go too far, a little tool like this is very helpful as well. So basically, you can just pop the end in there and then crank it open and then start again. But you can also actually use, it's got little different heights all the way around, like a little spiral all the way around there. So you can actually sort of move that. I should do it there, shouldn't I really? So you can see this thing, you've got obviously the hole where you can put your spark plug through to actually kind of open up your gap, but also you've got this little sort of, it's like a spiral all the way around, like a helter-skelter, and so the further around, of course, the bigger the gap. So it's a very useful little thing to have in your pocket when you're going to be tuning your car on the road on the way wherever. So now I've got my right gap. I'm just going to pop that in there like so. I may have to dim the lights for this, but if I turn that on now, I'm just going to go down, maybe down to sort of 1,000 RPM or something like that. Interesting little clicky noises. Right, so with the lights off, you can see a little bit more clearly. So the one with a very small gap, I mean, the sparks are definitely there, but obviously they're not maybe as fat as they could be. One in the middle, the kind of the Goldilocks one, you've got sort of lots of sparks and they sort of seem to be striking all the time. And on the bigger gap, obviously you've got a longer gap to go, but actually perhaps it's less consistent. And obviously you can get a higher powered coil if you really wanted to go down that road to get a bigger fat spark, and the fatter the spark the better, but of course it also is going to perhaps actually eat away at a standard spark plug a little bit, so you kind of have to think about that. So obviously we're just going to go with what we're supposed to do, the spec of the vehicle, but we are going to go for the sort of outer gap on that. So I'm going to go for that 25 thou because I just think the bigger the gap, probably within reason, the better it is. So now I've just got to do all of those spark plugs and then get them into the engine. Right then, so we're getting even closer. Now, the next thing, obviously we know we've got our new spark plugs and everything, but we don't know is if we're actually getting any spark through the distributor from the coil. So I've just got a little device here. I'm just going to pop that onto the number 1 cylinder, like so. Or the number 1 HT lead at least. And then I'm just going to connect it to an earth. I'm just going to go for the gearbox down here, and then, John, if you might do the honours, please. So we're just going to hold that in place. And then we'll crank it over. Oh yes, thank you. So that's great. So we've got a couple of little sparks coming from there, which is fantastic. So that means we have actually got spark. So that's a very exciting thing. So if we've got spark there, then the only thing we need now is a bit of fuel. And of course the fuel we had in this was pretty disgusting, so we drained all that out, and we've now drained, or sort of put in some flushing fuel if you like. So now the time has come, because it's only a year since we started this, let's be honest, so hopefully it'll just about have dissolved all the gunk out of the way. We can now drop that old skanky nasty unpleasant fuel, and we'll put in some lovely fresh new fuel, and then we shall see what happens. Right then, so let's have a little look and see what a year's worth of soaking has done. Oh, it looks quite disgusting. That's not a good colour, is it? It's not a nice colour at all. But much better than it was when we first did this. But it absolutely reeks of stale fuel. It looks a bit like stale pea, I've got to say. It's not good, is it? It actually smells a bit more like actual fuel, which is a good sign. I think that'll do. Right then, this is the last stage, some fresh fuel, and I've pushed the boat out and gone for some ethanol-free fuel, because I think this car deserves a little bit of love. It's been a long time. Lovely. So now I've reconnected our electric fuel pump. So John, if you could do the honours and just turn on the ignition. So now that lovely, fresh, new ethanol-free fuel is going to work its way into the carburetors. Okay, so now maybe try pumping the throttle a little bit, see if anything comes out of the pumps. Just keep pumping so that the actual... And we'll try and get the pumps to see if there's anything actually coming out. A bit more. Yeah, see lots of fuel rushing in. Beautiful. Cool. So, we've now got some fuel coming out. So, I think this is it, John. If you can do the honours, let's find out if the cheapest Ferrari in Europe, at least it was a year or so ago when we started this malarkey, is it actually going to run? Go on. Come on, baby. Bit of gas. Bit of gas. Come on! Oh! Oh, come on. Don't tease us, sir. Oh, come on! Oh, that's sounding good. That's sounding good. Yes! Come on! Come on! Come on! Come on! Oh, babe, this is good. This is good. He's just teasing me now. So, it's also amazing news because the cheapest Ferrari was actually cheap for all the wrong reasons. So maybe we've actually got a little bit of a diamond here. This could not be a lemon, it might be, well, some absolute exciting fruit. So obviously we now need to kind of tidy up the carburetors, get them working properly, give them a bit of a clean. It's clearly a bit of an exhaust leak. We're doing a bit of a clean on the inside and on the outside, but we are on our way. And all of that stuff is a job for another day. So there we are. Well done, John.
Well done,
amazing. That sounds really good. Still a bit smoky though. Got another job, John.
Oh no!